Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Don't mind my robes, I was just on Tinder catfishing Jedi for the Empire. Silly Jedi trying to find love in a crazy time like this. Anyway, it's getting close to new Star Wars film time. And so we're going to be coming out of hibernation and taking a look at the new trilogy once again. And today we're going to be discussing what exactly happened to the Resistance after The Last Jedi. At the end of The Last Jedi, the Resistance fleet is completely devastated. Although they managed to successfully evacuate the base on Dakar, the First Order was successfully able to track them through hyperspace thanks to the new supercomputer designed by General Hux with the help of a super intelligent AI entity known as Eva. The First Order were able to inflict a massive amount of damage on the Resistance fleet and destroy the bridge of their flagship, the Radius. General Princess Leia Organa, Admiral Akbar, and most of the high-ranking Resistance officers are lost as a result. The Resistance managed to limp away from this encounter because they're able to outpace the larger and slower First Order ships at subspace speeds, but they were quickly running out of fuel, and one by one the Resistance fleet was being left behind and destroyed. The remaining fighters finally managed to make it to the crate system and stage a final stand in an old rebel bunker. In the 11th hour, Luke Skywalker appears out of nowhere and is able to distract the First Order long enough to allow the remaining Resistance fighters to escape the planet on the Millennium Falcon. The entire Resistance, which had numbered in the hundreds and thousands, was now reduced to such a small number that they could all fit in a small Corellian freighter. This was a defeat many times worse than the Battle of Hoth, and the Resistance fighters were in a more desperate situation than the worst moments of the mid-rim retreat. But the Resistance had managed to escape with some plot-crucial characters, so the fight goes on. And amongst those survivors is, of course, General Princess Leia, last of the Alderaanians, maybe. And although things are bad, the princess has experienced tragedies much greater that only Spock and Arthur Dent could understand. Leia remains optimistic that they can rebuild the Resistance. So we're on the Millennium Falcon, and Rey, Finn, and Poe are finally sitting down and catching up with each other. Well, actually, this is basically the first time Rey and Poe have seen each other, really. They immediately become friends, brought closer by the fact that they were both tortured by Kylo Ren, and now are torture buddies. As a matter of fact, all three of them are actually taking things pretty well, considering the fact that their entire fleet and most of their friends are now dead, which is actually one of the better side effects of head trauma. The ability to forget things. Leia unfortunately has kept that old head of hers intact and is now thinking about good old Han while sitting in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon next to Chewie. I completely agree with the princess. Star Wars is missing that special spark ever since Han Solo was killed by his little emo son. To make things even worse, that gross-looking Solastan Nien Nunb has taken over Han's seat. Sure, he was Lando's co-pilot back in the day, but he doesn't even speak basic. Then we see C-3PO help Rey translate some of the old Jedi tech she had stolen from Luke's Jedi library on Ahch-To, and Rose-Tico is out cold, still probably in a coma or something. I think she got off light, especially if you look at that crazy stunt she tried to pull during the Battle of Crate. In our world, we have a special name for individuals who slam into other people in vehicles while going 100 miles per hour. We call them terrorists, and then we convict them of first-degree murder. The fact that Finn isn't snuffing her out with a pillow while she's sleeping just shows us how forgiving and kind he is. While they're still in hyperspace, C-3PO manages to intercept some transmissions from Black Squadron. Shortly after the Resistance base was discovered on Dakar, Princess General Leia, last of the Alderaanians maybe, had ordered Captain Wexley and the rest of Black Squadron to go on a secret mission to make contact with the Resistance's allies in the Outer Rim. You know, the guys who were supposed to show up at Crate but completely ghosted Leia and then made her look like an old, sad lady for a split second before Luke showed up? Now, the communication C-3PO has was from Black 3, Jessica Pava, but the message was kinda damaged after the First Order destroyed the local Resistance comsat. Still, Poe manages to piece together some information about what's happened to the Black Squadron and their quest to find the Outer Rim allies, and he kinda runs off and goes to help them, but that's an epic story for another time. We'll do another video about what happens there. When the Millennium Falcon finally leaves hyperspace, they land on the sketchy backwards world of Batuu, at the Black Spire outpost. Batuu was in the Outer Rim, and the Black Spire was an unaffiliated outpost, aka a smuggler's haven, full of Resistance sympathizers and First Order spies, and your average American tourist on their way to Orlando. While on Batuu, the Resistance met with the famous pirate Hondo Ohnaka. It's kind of cool that he meets up with Chewie because they had both been in the Star Wars storyline since the Clone Wars. Onaka apparently was running another one of his legitimate businesses. This time it was called Onaka Transport Solutions, and yes, he was most likely running drugs and trafficking Twi'lek children. But the important thing is he helped the Resistance find an outpost on the outskirts of the Black Spire. He even hires the Millennium Falcon and Chewie to do a dangerous run into First Order territory to rob a First Order train laden with coaxium, because I guess a lot of people missed that plot line from Solo: A Star Wars Story, which is a real shame. It was actually a pretty good movie, in my opinion. 2 weeks later, the First Order arrives and is turning over every stone, looking for the Resistance. They put out rewards for the Resistance and hire bounty hunters to supplement their forces, but still have no luck tracking them down. Eventually, the Resistance relocates to a much more permanent base. Taking some cues from the Rebellion, the Resistance decided to find a much more hostile, remote, and uncomfortable planet to build a base on after their more comfortable one on Dakar was destroyed. Kind of like how the Rebellion moved their base from the pleasant jungles of Yavin 4 to the barren snowfields of Hoth. The Resistance built their new base on the trash planet of Anoat. For some reason, not all Star Wars species thought it was a good idea to just push your trash into a star or a black hole. It is a good idea. Don't believe all those keep our stars clean activists. They have no idea what they're talking about. The result of not putting all your trash in a gravitational anomaly resulted in planets like Lotho Minor, where Maul ended up after he was cut in half by Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the planet of Anoat, which was located in the Outer Rim and discovered prior to the Clone Wars by the mining corporation known as Figs Excavation. They sent human colonists to start excavating minerals from the planet, and they did such a great job on mining the planet that they destroyed the environment and poisoned the atmosphere, leaving the planet completely uninhabitable. Although the official canon story says that Anoat had once been a city-wide world that had been gassed by the Galactic Empire before the Battle of Yavin, which made the entire world also uninhabitable. The individuals that didn't run away instead turned crazy and became mutated beings known as lurkers, who use Octogs to hunt people. Don't really know which story is true, but one seems to be anti-mining corporations and the other seems to be anti-imperial. Both sides kind of have their motives. The important part is that by the time the Resistance reach Anoat, the planet is more or less abandoned and covered in poisonous gases, and also serves as a trash dumping location for species that don't believe in dumping trash into stars. Those savages. Now, Anoat was a great location for a secret hidden base for several reasons. For one, no one wanted to visit a trash planet, not even First Order scouts who were looking for the Resistance. And even if the First Order came into the system, it would be relatively hard for them to scan the surface thanks to all of that thick pollution. You see, polluting your environment in such an extreme way that it destroys the atmosphere doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Anyway, not only was the planet of Anoat very toxic for humans to walk around, it was just generally unpleasant as well. If the gases didn't get you, large monsters that were tough enough to adapt to this new world would get you. There was also plenty of scraps for a scavenger to sort through to build whatever equipment the Resistance needed, which is basically what Rey was up to most of the time. I know it's not like the most glorious thing for one of the last Jedi in the galaxy and remaining hope for the Resistance to be doing, but in all fairness, she was pretty good at scavenging. I mean, before episode 7, she was doing all this advanced rappelling and trash bobsledding. These are clearly not things that an inexperienced scavenger would be doing, and she built a whole career and life around scavenging. And had she not left Jakku, maybe she'd be the one in charge of Nima Outpost. I respect anyone who could put a lot of focus and energy in their respective industry, even if it's sorting through trash. And besides, what has really changed now that Rey has joined the Resistance again? She's back at square one at the bottom of the scavenger food chain, fighting over scraps with giant monsters. You think someone who's made it like Unkar Plutt went out into the fields anymore to search for trash? That guy's done some great things with his life. He also got his arm ripped off by Chewie, so he probably can't really pick up things anymore. Meanwhile, Poe and Finn are traveling around the galaxy, broing out and doing fun guy stuff, like getting into bar fights with aliens. All Last Jedi, Poe and Holdo were just clashing and making everyone uncomfortable, and Rose and Finn just didn't feel right and were putting everyone to sleep. We need more Poe Finn, and yes, I ship them, because there's nothing more sacred than the love between one manly bro and another super manly bro. Meanwhile, the ladies, Princess General Leia, Rose, and Rey, are all bored out of their minds hiding on this heap of trash, while the First Order is basically massacring any planet that's ever spoken to the Resistance. Leia finally decides they deserve to have their own adventure, and they're all excited to leave. Unfortunately, Leia's idea of adventure is going to Mon Cala and reaching out to those old fish heads who once were the greatest allies of the Rebel Alliance and the New Republic. And yes, this is starting to feel a lot like another recycled story from the last 2 times we visited Mon Cala in the comics. They need ships, and the squid people are being mean, and there's probably going to be a lot of fighting, but that's all we basically have for you right now. As I mentioned before, we're going to be doing another video covering what Black Squadron and Poe Dameron was up to for some time, and also what else is happening in the wider galaxy in between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. So that should be really interesting. Stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button, and if you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.